Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to look at drawing vines for our pumpkin patch pumpkin. I'm going to start with my lightest color of green, or you could start with your darkest color of green. That's completely up to you guys. The first thing we want to do is use some of those lines we've been talking about, and I like to start with a spiral vine and have it come down and make another spiral at the other end. And I want you to notice how slowly I'm drawing. I'm not drawing super fast. I'm taking my time. Then I want to do a big pumpkin leaf right here, so I think I'm going to change colors. I'm going to find a darker green, or you could switch to a lighter green, and I want a leaf right here in this big spot. So I'm going to turn my paper around because we're going to do our leaves with our hands. So I'm going to line my hand up down here on my vine. And then remember how we talked about tracing hands? You need to be straight up and down. I'm not letting my oil pastel bend this way or this way. I'm keeping it straight up and down while I trace my hand. And I can't get all the way in my fingers because they're not big enough. But that is okay because this is supposed to be a leaf on our plant. So when I move my hand, it's not quite connected over here. I'm going to connect it. And to help it look even more like a leaf, I'm going to do some more lines, like the little veins in a leaf that go up from the bottom into the ends of the leaf, like this, to make it look a little bit more like a leaf instead of a hand. I still have a lot of space left, so I'm going to do some more little curly vines. I'm going to keep my dark green this time. And I'm pushing pretty hard, but not super hard because I don't want to break my oil pastel. They're a lot like crayons, so they can be delicate and they can break. I'm also holding it down near the end when I'm pushing on it. I'm not holding it way up here because that'll make it snap. I hold it down near the end. I have another big space here, so I think I'm going to do my hand, and it's going to go off the edge of a page a little bit. That's okay. I'm just going to trace the top part that is on the page. So once again, I'm going to go straight up and down around my hand, and the oil pastel might get your fingers a little dirty. That's okay. We'll go over to the sink and wash them off with some soap and water. If I turn my hands, you can sort of see a little bit of it on there. No big deal. We'll wash this off with a little bit of soap. There's my hand, and once again I'm going to add some veins and lines like you would find in a leaf up into my fingers to help it look more like a leaf that I might find in my pumpkin patch. So I'm going to turn my paper again. I still have some big blank spots out here. I think I'm going to do another spiral. I really like those spirals. I don't know about you guys. Those are some of my favorite things to see in the pumpkin patch, the way they spiral like that. And then the other thing we see sometimes in a pumpkin patch are the little yellow flowers where the pumpkins grow, where either some are going to grow or didn't quite take off before. So to do that, they usually go right out of the spirals, and they kind of have that zigzag, zigzag, zigzag shape, like that. And then I'm going to draw a couple of lines up to make it a little prettier flower. Where else do I have a pocket that I could put a flower? Maybe over here. So I could go zigzag, 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 and then do some lines back up like that. And a little bit of my green and my yellow are running together. That's perfectly okay. I think I'm going to tuck one more coming out of this leaf down here. Zigzag, zigzag the end. And it's going to hide behind that leaf a little bit. I'm going to draw my lines coming up. So I have 3 flowers, 2 big leaves for my hands, and a bunch of spirals to start my pumpkin patch. Let's see, I think I have a few more open areas. I'm going to go back in with that green and do a few more little spirals all the way out to the edge. So I really want to fill my paper since my pumpkin's going to cover most of this middle section when I glue it on. Lots of spirals. Just like we've seen in our Van Gogh paintings. And I might even have a couple that go off the edge of the page over here, or over here. Being very careful not to get it on my table though. I'm just stopping at the edge of my paper. Alright, I think I have it pretty full. What do you guys think? Yep, alright. Let's go to pause here and let you work on yours. Then we'll go on to the next step. Great, now you've done your leaves and your hands. and your vines. So we're going to start working with our liquid watercolors. I'm going to take my big paintbrush, and when I work with watercolors, I want to make sure that I never just splat my paintbrush straight down. That's not good for the paintbrush. It can break the bristles and make your painting really messy. When I pick up watercolors or I need to mix them, I always do it in a gentle circle like this. We like to pet gently, almost like as if it were a kitten, right? We don't want to be really hard or do fast movements in watercolor. And as you can see, I already have a bunch on my brush. It drips off if I'm not careful. So when you're picking some up at your table, make sure you let it go like this a little bit and let it drip. Or you can pick it up and wipe it very gently on the side of your dish so that you get all the extras off. I'm going to put this up here out of my way. And the first thing I'm going to paint with just the green are my leaves. So I'm going to find my hands, and I'm going to paint right on my hands. And as you can see, where you did the oil pastels, you see that in here? It's called resisting. Oil and water don't like to mix with each other. So when I do this, it pops right off of the oil pastel. It won't make it messy. It won't even touch it. It just goes around the oil pastels. So I'm going to go ahead and bring all this color up here. So I have a nice big green leaf now. I'm going to get some more because my brush was drying out. And I'm going to do my other hand that's up in this corner. Oops, my bowl's in the way. I think I better move it. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to be really careful as I can. Just stay inside those leaves. Just like that. I'm going to pull this one this way. There we go. And now I have my nice green leaves. So the next thing I want to work on, I'm going to rinse my brush out in my water. And it's kind of the same thing. I'm going to mix it gently in the bottom of that water cup, so I'm holding onto it so it doesn't tip over. And then I'm going to go like this and get the water off of my brush as much as I can to keep it in my water cup. Then I'm going to pick up some of this yellow because I like the yellow liquid watercolor. Same way, I'm just going to go like this to pick some up. Make sure it doesn't drip. And then where I have my spirals, I'm going to paint that yellow color. I really like that yellow color. It's pretty. And yours might show up a little bit darker than mine. My water's thinned out a little bit more than yours is. And that's just because it's the kind that I happen to have at home. And I'm going to paint every place that's not inside my hands. So I'm going to be careful to paint around my hands. If I go a little bit inside, that's okay. That happens sometimes. It might blend the colors a little bit together, but they're still going to stay a yellow or a yellowy green. And you'll notice out here where we did our green vines, the yellow isn't washing off the green. It's just popping right off because water and oil do not mix. Say it with me. Water and oil do not mix. Yeah, that's why this is called a resist. A watercolor and oil pastel resist. I'm going to keep going until my whole paper is covered with that yellow, except for my hands. I already did those with the green color. There we go. Almost finished here in this corner. Yours might take a little bit longer depending on the size brush that you have and how careful you're being. I've had a lot of practice as a watercolor artist, so I can do this pretty quick. You probably won't do yours quite as fast as mine. Now let's look at adding my yellow and my greens on. I'm going to grab a little bit of blue, and where it's still kind of wet, I'm just going to blop it a little bit here and there with my blue. This is going to let our watercolors kind of fade together. Just like if we were in the garden with Pumpkin Jack, we would see some dark areas down underneath the vines and the leaves, and we would see some lighter areas up near the sunshine, right? So I'm just going to do that and let it fade into each other. And I'm not going to do too much, just a little bit, maybe some more around those flowers that I drew so they stick out a little bit. There was one flower, and then there's another flower. I think there was one more. Wasn't it up here? Yeah. Get a little bit more on my paintbrush. It's getting too light. I'll make that flower pop out a little bit. And then I just kind of go blop, 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 blop. But not too much. I want to leave some of my yellows on there. Then I'm going to rinse my brush again. Very careful. I'm going to wipe it on the edge. Make sure I have all the extra colors out that I don't want. And then a little bit on those areas where I had my flowers before. We had them yellow. I'd like to add in a little bit of orange because sometimes they have some orange on them. So I'm going to mix my yellow and my red over here. You guys should already have orange on your table, though, lucky ducks. I just don't have any at home. I'm going to add a little bit of that orangey red color to the insides of my flowers. You can see where that oil is resisting and it just kind of pops right back off on the water. Isn't that so cool? I love that when we're working with different mediums in art, how that works sometimes. Oops, I got a little on my finger, so I'm just going to pick that up with my hand. You can also get a tissue and dry it off, and as you can see, if it's still wet, it'll come right off of there. Isn't that neat how that works with watercolor? Okay, once I have all of this finished, I'm going to move it over to the drying rack, and we're going to use it next time when we come back. Hi guys, welcome back. Last week we started with our vines in the background for our pumpkin patch pumpkins. Today we're going to work on the pumpkins themselves and their shadows. So you should have a piece of orange paper or be getting one very soon, and then on your table you'll have a couple of these templates that are cut out. Yours are covered in plastic, so you'll know that if you write on them accidentally, we'll just erase it. You're going to use a pencil to trace yours. I'm going to use a Sharpie so that it shows up on my screen, but you make sure that you use a pencil when we do this part. So I'm always going to hold it in the middle with my whole hand. I do not want this template to move because if it moves after I start drawing, it's going to mess me up. So I put it in the middle of my page. I hold it down pretty firm, and then I start at the top of my page and I work my way around the edge. I very gently push on the edge. Oh, see how I went over a little? That's okay. On the edge of my template. And you notice as I'm going around, look at this. My pinky is resting on my paper. That helps me to control, see how I pick my pinky up and it moved? Helps me to control where that pencil's going a little bit better, or this pen. Even adults have trouble sometimes with this. It's a little tricky. And then, now see, I'm over here. I can't go under my arm. That's going to be tricky. So I'm going to move my hand instead. You notice I put this hand down first before I move this hand to make sure it doesn't move. And then I'm going to start up here and pull down because it's really hard to push a pencil this way. It's much easier to always pull one towards you. And then I'm going to go back up to the top and I'm going to pull it over this direction. And I should be done. If I kind of peek all around the edge, I can see my black line. And when I move this, there is my pumpkin on my paper. Now, one more thing before I cut it out, and I want you guys to do this too. Take your pencil, draw a line straight down, and then this one's going to have a bit of a bump because pumpkins are kind of bumpy. And then the next one's going to have a bump out of this side, just like that. And then we'll have a bump over here, bumping the opposite direction. I'll have one more bumpy line over here. Great. Go ahead and try that now, you guys. The next thing we're going to work on is adding different types of lines to our pumpkin. We've been working on lines for a long time now, a couple of weeks, so you should have this next part down. But just in case you don't remember all of our lines, let's talk about some of them. Let's see, what's the first kind of line I could use? Ooh, I like zigzag lines. How many of you like zigzag lines? Raise your hands. Oh, a lot of you. Awesome. Good. So let me show you what a zigzag line is going to look like on here. Zig, zag, zig, zag. You see how I'm trying to keep it in between my two lines, between this line and between this line? I just want to fill in this section with zigzags, not any other section. Now, if I want it to be like a pattern, I have to repeat that same zigzag. See how they're kind of lining up with those other zigzags? We want yours to line up the same way. I think I can squeeze one more in over here. What do you guys think? I'm going to slow it down a little bit to make sure I don't make a mistake and go over my line. Whoops, I did a little bit. I think maybe I could even fit a few more and pretend like they went off the side of the page right over there, can't I? Now I have this whole section filled in with zigzags. What can we do in the next section? Oh, we could do polka dots. I like that idea too. Let's try that out. And I want to keep them in lines, so I'm going to keep them as straight as I can with one another. Whoop, that one would go off the edge, wouldn't it? And then the next one shows a little bit more because my pumpkin's getting bigger at this bump. There we go. I think I'm going to pause the film now and then record it in fast motion for you. So Once you have all of your lines filled in each of your sections, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut this out. So now we have our pumpkin cut out. And if you'll remember, we were talking about shadows and light sources. So the next thing we have to figure out what to do is where we're going to put our black shadow under our pumpkin. If your light source is going to come this direction, it's going to be down here. If your light source comes this direction, it's going to be over here. Either way, you're going to be cutting in oval or in ellipse for this next piece with your template. Have a black piece of paper. Yours might be a little smaller than mine. I just haven't cut it down to size yet. And we'll be using our shadow template. Now, because we're working on black paper, we're going to have to be careful to use a pencil for this next part. I'm going to use my nice sharp pencil to trace around this. Again, I'm going to hold it very firmly like I did last time. I'm going to go all the way around the edge. And this might be tricky for you to see on the black paper on the camera, but it's there. And then if I lift it up, now you can see the graphite reflecting around the edge. It's time to cut out our shadow piece. Great! Now we're ready to use our sheet that we worked on last week. Remember how we did our vines and with our hands? We did leaves and we added some of the little buds in for the pumpkins. Now we're going to combine it all together to make our pumpkin patch picture. And of course, I want to figure out where I want my shadow. I could do it a little to the side this way. I could do it a little to the side this way. Or I could do it straight under my pumpkin, depending on where I want my light source. I think I want my light source over here in this corner, so I'm going to tap mine just a little bit to the side. Now, I'm going to do is take off my pumpkin piece and set it to the side. I was careful to leave this here because I already lined it up and I didn't want it to move. I'm going to hold it down with this hand over here and lift it up. I'm going to shake my glue down a little bit. It's already open. You can see the bottom of this piece is up off the base. That means that this is open already, and I can look down inside. And then I'm going to work on very carefully on the side doing a squiggly line. Not too much glue, just a squiggly line there. And I'm going to leave this hand here and pat this way, which means this side's still loose. We didn't put glue there, so I'm going to put glue on this side and hold it with my fingers in that same hand and do some wiggly glue. There we go. And then glue it down on that side. Now I haven't moved it. It's still in the same spot. Time for my pumpkin. I turn my pumpkin over and shake. And I don't need a whole lot of glue. I'm going to do some dots of glue all along the edge. I don't need too much because this will be enough to hold my pumpkin with some little dots like that. They almost look like little white pumpkin seeds, don't they? I'm going to turn my pumpkin over with two hands so it doesn't accidentally drop. And I had it placed just a little to the side of that shadow, didn't I? I'm going to stick it on there, pat around the edges to make sure all of that glue is sticking down. Beautiful. I'm almost finished. I think my name is on the back of this one, but I would like it to be on the front so that everybody knows who did this one. So I'm going to find my marker. Right down here is a great place to do it. Mrs. Congdon. There we go. Now everybody knows that this is my paper and my fancy artwork. Let's get to work on yours.